Okay, so the options are is to replace it with similar materials to what's on the bridge now. It's a 3x8 Douglas fir treated, and it will provide a much better riding surface because it won't be as checked as you see below. The nails will, and the screws will all be in and everything else, so it'll be brand new wood. And you know, this is an option that we would probably have to replace every about 15 years. But you know, it would provide a much better surface than what we have now, and it's in the budget supplemental. This is what we're recommending at about $160,000. So the alternatives there are two alternatives that we were looking at for bridge decking replacement. We had SGM, our engineers, look at it. This is a glue laminated wood piece that would be put on it. These have running boards for for vehicles. We could take those off. This would be a nicer surface at a much higher cost. And so,
how about the life? Is it longer life?
You know, the reality is yes, I think it would be a longer life, but we can't, you know, after 20 years, the sun in this area and everything else will take its toll on the wood. And, you know, we try to look at it going, would this just last 3 times as long? And we can't guarantee that. And so I can't say that it would last a lot longer than this. I think, you know, with the glue laminated, you might get, you know, another 5 to 10 years out of it, but you're not going to get double the lifespan because it's about double the cost. And so, you know, the third option was precast concrete, which would match kind of what we have on the Wingo Bridge that goes over the highway. However, the caveat to this one is you put precast concrete on a bridge that was put in this place in 1917, we'd have to do a lot more structural analysis to see if it could actually handle the concrete on the bridge, and we can't guarantee that, and it is a significant cost that goes above and beyond what we had for just replacing the decking. We also, when we did the replacement of the decking, was the fact that all the other railroad bridges throughout Roaring Fork Valley on the Rio Grande Trail are the same as this. They are just the timber decking pieces, and RAFTA is not looking to redo any of theirs with a different type of aesthetic. So anyway, and then, you know, going back to the concrete thing, the load might be too much for that bridge to handle, and you know, we're not recommending going to that point, but it is an option out there. And then obviously the last option is to replace the bridge overall.
Right.
The reality for that is it's expensive. It's a long bridge, and you know, this is a historic bridge. This bridge has been there since 1917. It's a historic railroad bridge, so we'd have to go through the State Historic Preservation Office, and you know, and then also deal with the cost of a new bridge, which could be in excess of $1 million in this location. So staff is recommending going with the replacement of the boards, and was giving it to the boards to see where they would like to go.
Question, just a quick question is, can you recycle the wood that's there? Can that wood be repurposed as a textured siding or something? I'm just wondering, is there a market for it or any value in the wood that you'd be taking off?
You know, we could look into that. It's a 3x8, so it's not necessarily a siding type of board. They're pretty heavy.
Awkward thing, right?
But, you know, it's definitely something that we could put out there to the public and see if anyone would like to repurpose this. I know, I'd look through our system. I don't think we have anything that we would use for the open space, but we could definitely put it out to the public for that.
George?
Gary, can we get a better milled Douglas firs so it starts out to be smoother? Because even if you say you've got a potential lifespan of 15 years, in reality it may be only 10 years by the time it starts to splinter.
Right. And so, you know, we can work with the contractor on it. We're trying to get a better product than we got originally. This wasn't a treated Douglas fir piece. This was pine. And so the Douglas fir should hold up better, but you know, we'll definitely look into that. If we go this route, we're gonna find the best mill possible, because a 3x8 is a special order, and so it takes time to get this in. And so we could definitely look at the options. And since RAFTA's gonna be redoing parts of the Soapers Creek Bridge, which we'll talk about next, you know, maybe we have some economies of scale there.
And then what's the time frame for this?
The time frame is, if Ted was here, I'll get you that time frame. But we're gonna probably, that's why we wanna do the budget supplemental now, so we can get them on order and get them in this spring or early summer.
And the bridge would be closed for approximately?
The bridge will be closed for, you know, that will have to be worked out with the contractor. But, you know, we're trying to figure out the best time to do it. We would most likely will not, I mean, I'm not gonna recommend that we do this in midsummer, because it's hard to get around this section, but you can with the Basalto Snow Mesh Trail, so.
I've got Howie and then Steve.
Yeah, following on George's question about the surface, first of all, I'm amazed I haven't had a flat tire going across this thing for the last 10 years. So the emerging splinter effect does concern me. We put something new in and it still deteriorates quickly. How does this surface compare to the surface that's on the Brush Creek Trail up at the south end of Brush Creek Trail that we put in by the access to Sky Mountain? That's an engineered wood, I think.
It's IPA wood. It's IPA. It's a Brazilian hardwood that was put in there. But the thing is, those are milled in, it's only a 2x8 inch piece, where this is a 3x8 inch piece. This is a special order, and it's just because of the way the bridge is made. And, you know, trying to replace these on the decking that used to be, I mean, there used to be rails that went across this, and railroad ties that used to be under this. And so we're trying to replicate, we're not trying, we have to replicate this, because the way it was engineered and built, you can see the railings, and the way it was built was those 3x8s actually provide some structure to the overall, so we can run our snowcats and our trucks over that. So, you know, trying to get a different type of material. Plus, we wouldn't want to use a Brazilian hardwood anymore, even though it was an incredible product. We're trying very hard to be as environmental as possible with our choices in wood, and, you know, Douglas fir is definitely a more renewable.
You do want a little bit of flex in that transverse decking. I asked about that because I thought that might be a way to save money. But if you build that decking too stiff, you lose some of that flex. Or if you put too many sleepers in, you lose some of that flex, and then you end up wearing out your deck boards a little bit faster. Plus, you have to raise since you'd have an extra inch on it, you have to do like a pavement ramp up to the abutments, and you may even have to raise the railings up a little bit. So it gets into a little bit retrofitting issue that we'd like to avoid.
Thanks, Steve.
A couple of things. In terms of reusing the existing decking, thought occurs to me that if someone could flip the boards over, the other side would probably be very usable for some other small pedestrian bridge or something that somebody might have, or for using for some sort of, you know, repurposing the lumber for use in something else.
That's a great idea.
So I definitely would not just haul it to the landfill, but try to market those, because that's a special size. Somebody should be able to use that. Also, in terms of the historic bridge, I looked up, last spring I was in Athens, Georgia, and they have a very comprehensive bicycle trail system being built partly on old railroad grade that eventually is going to go 20, 30 miles. It's, you know, akin to our Rio Grande Trail. And this is a Civil War era train system that they're putting the bike trail on. And so there's some interesting pictures of an old railroad trestle that's much older. It looks more like the Maroon Creek trestle, all made from wood. So the site for this is bikeathens.org. I think it'd be worth all of us looking at that just to get some ideas. They're going to eventually put the bike trail on top of on this old trestle. It's a historic project, pretty costly, I think, to make sure it's structurally sound, and they have to replace some of the timbers and whatnot to make it work. But it's a pretty neat project and a beautiful old railroad trestle that they're preserving. Going into the future, when it comes, when this one fails or we have to do something, I think whoever is looking at that should try to preserve the historic bridge, even though it's newer than the Civil War era one, but it still has historic significance.
Yeah, it does.
Well, and that's why we're not proposing that we
Yeah.
do the replacement. I mean, to us, it's a really cool bridge when you look underneath it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's and yeah, it's something that we want to preserve for now.
Yeah, and we don't want to do anything today that then jeopardizes putting too much weight on it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it sounds like you're advocating that it's the Doug fir, same dimension lumber, no decision points here. You're just sharing that with us and
Well,
looking for a nod.
right, because it'll come back to the BOCC for a, approval for the budget supplemental. So if
Right.
you guys direct it, that would be enough. The Open Space Board should make a recommendation to the BOCC. So, but the BOCC just, if they have a head nod, but if you guys have anything for the Open Space Board, that would be good.
So Open Space Board,
I'm in favor of it.
Okay, so they are already.
Michael?
We're still on Kelly too. We'll come back to her
Oh, sorry.
when you're.
Oh, good, you were looking that way and I was waving over here.
Well, you've got a recommendation from the Open Space Board to approve.
So we have a recommendation from the Open Space Board. Okay. So what's Kelly?
Sure, I
what's
just
your?
have two quick questions. When was the last time similar work was done on this? And then just explain why this didn't come in the original budget, because it's not an addition, it's a full request, right?
Yes, and so I can answer that, because we had it in the budget as a to be determined. We were still trying to figure out the numbers, because we knew the next one we're gonna talk about was under bid. It was out to bids, and we didn't get bids on the first one. We wanted to see what that came in on, so we could provide you the cost for options. We didn't have them during the regular budget, so that's why we're here now.
Yeah, the SGM's report giving us all the different alternatives came in around the 1st of November, so we were just a little bit behind getting that completed, because they actually gave us a first report and we said, well, can you also include how much it would cost just to replace the entire bridge? And that's what kind of held us back a little bit. But as to when the last time the decking was replaced, I don't know. Do you know?
When it was put on, it was about 18 years ago.
And shut me up if you get too much information, but some of those alternatives go back to that flex issue we were talking about earlier, like the precast concrete panels doesn't allow for flex. The glue lam, less flex. So asking multiple engineers to give us opinions on this has been like a couple of doctors giving you opinions on something. Like they've kind of been back and forth. But RAFTA's engineers is whom we ultimately kind of took their suggestion, because they have so much knowledge with these old railroad style bridges and what really works, and they have a few themselves. And they were impressed with our Wingo bridge and the deck life we got out of that compared to their bridge in Satank. And they're actually changing their spec on their Satank bridge to have 3 sleepers and 3x8s, because it seems to be the optimum amount of flex. So.
Got it. Any other questions from our board? George, are you? Go ahead. I see a go-ahead nod from George.
And I just want to clarify, this is, the supplemental is coming from the open space maintenance budget.
Correct.
Steve, we okay?
No, I'm okay with
Okay, I think we got the nods.
So the next one is the Soapers Creek Bridge. It's just down valley. It's just down valley of the Emma Schoolhouse. This was in the budget for this year. though we didn't have bids. And the first time they went out to bid, they didn't get any bids. And so they went out to bid again, and that was after the budget process. The bids came back, and with the bids that came back, it's about, let me get to that one.
69.
I'll get the right number. So the total adjusted budget is, you guys budgeted in the budget process 127,000 as a 50% partner with RAFTA. The bids came in, it's now, it's 162,000 per partner. And so this budget supplemental is for $35,416.50. And we feel that, you know, giving you some background on this, even though we did it during the budget, this bridge, you can see right here, this area right here is failing is significant failure of this abutment. And the significant failure can be, you know, they can fix it, but it costs more than we originally we originally thought. So we're here just to supplement this budget. RAFT is fully on board with their half, and so unless you guys have further questions, you can kind of, here's some better photos for you. So, yeah, this is,
So do we have a recommendation from Open Space here to approve this? Go ahead, Howie.
I move we support Gary's recommendation with one caveat. That the signage on each end of it be visible to reflect that it's Pickens County money and RAFTA money spent to do the repair. I bring that up only because the times I've ridden across this bridge, the only sign was for the Land and Water Conservation Fund having paid for the bridge. At least that's the impression the public would get.
okay.
So
We'll bring that to RAFTA and see if we can put a better,
they should
a
tell
full
their story.
sign.
We should tell ours, so.
Yeah.
Maybe we could combine the signs instead of
Yes.
getting sign mania.
Well, I'd like them to flash.
Anyway,
Motion activated.
do we have a recommendation with taking a look at the signs? Yeah. Amy,
Or have no sign.
no sign?
No sign.
Wayne, did you want to?
I'd be okay with no sign.
I do want to weigh in. I just want to, I'm going to abstain from voting on this because I'm really good friends with the contractor
Okay.
who was awarded this. I don't want to have any appearance of conflict.
Okay.
And BOCC,
What do you think about signs, Amy? Don't know.
Yeah, I guess I could go either way on the signs. I mean, I think it is important to let the public
discreet.
know.
That's what I've
Yeah,
said.
that, you know, we are participating in this, and I think that actually is helpful if they are.
You could just pin a 3x5 card on there right in the end of the beam. and it would work.
So you have an approval,
sounds
but
we've
we
got
don't know
approval.
about the sign.
I would love to put, so we have an approval from Open Space, so I'm just looking for a nod from our board, and I'd propose a nod with modest, very modest, singular signs. One little sign could do it on each end, maybe attached to the abutment or somewhere, or to the railing, so it's not a big in-your-face, what do you call those signs that are interpretive signage? We're not looking for interpretive signage.
You can put a sign along the side on the rail. It doesn't even have to be on the front or back of the bridge. You just,
Yeah.
a little plaque on the.
Plaque, I like that one.
Exactly, that sounds good.
So in the spirit of Bugsy Barnard, I suggest a sign that says, "This bridge has no sign in the spirit of Bugsy Barnard, who got rid of the billboards in Pickens County."
I'll go along with that. Do we have a nod on this from everybody? Okay, I think that's a move, press on.
okay. And the last budget supplemental we've got is, for the Lazy Glen barn. You know, the Lazy Glen barn, since we have purchased the Lazy Glen property, you know, the barn we have been doing a lot of work on it. And, you know, we have Nordic in there. We have an agricultural operator on one side. The agricultural operator has a residence on one side. There was a existing residence on the other side where the Nordic was, and we have renovated that and now have a ranger in it. But during the renovations, we came under the building code for the one most recent one that you guys have adopted. And, you know, when we were working with the building department on this, for the new one, we had to put in a 2-hour firewall between the more commercial aspects, which are the Nordic, and the residential aspects. And during that, they were like, well, I think you need to do the other one too. And so, because the other residents did not have a 2-hour firewall between the agricultural operations and the residents, so what we're recommending is to, you know, approve funding to make that happen on this. This happened outside the budget, and it happened in January. We've gotten a lot of work done, but to fully supplement the budget, to be able to handle this, we're asking for the budget to be raised $39,000 under our Lazy Glen code, so we can finish this up. We've also done some electrical work on it, so we've I think, and Ted can correct me if I'm wrong, but with this, we feel the barn is fully up to code, and hopefully we will not be coming in for other supplementals to get this barn any more up to code than we already have it. So,
I had a question just about the one option was to go for a singular layer of drywall and a sprinkler system, which would be more expensive. What's the odd chance that we're going to need the sprinkler system someday in the future anyway? Is that a possibility, or is it unless we change the codes?
As far as I know, that won't be ever needed, because we're now up to the code for 2-hour separation between commercial and residential. But so I guess we would be grandfathered in.
well, it wouldn't be a
Now.
grandfather, it would just, as long as we didn't do any further renovations. If we want to change it in the future and the building code changes, we might go through this all again, but we meet the building code today, and unless we go in, because we changed the other residents, so by changing other residents, they looked at what else we had in that barn that needed to be up to code, and we just feel responsible always to get our properties and our structures up to code. So this to us is just a kind of a health, safety, kind of get the barn up to code. And since we have people living there and we have all the commercial activities that go on there, this is just a good way of doing it. And hopefully, if the code changes, we'll be back in the future. And that's just part of the deal.
Does your
Open
board
space?
need to weigh in? Yeah.
I would recommend that we approve this.
You good, Howie?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to abstain on this.
Okay, but the rest of your board is in favor,
Michael.
I think.
All right,
Michael's
so for,
okay. How was our board doing? George, are you okay? George is okay with it? Steve? Kelly? I think we're good too.
Total project question.
Sure.
Graham, Gary. In total, how much have we spent on the facilities since we bought this property? Do you have a,
Oh, I can't bring that off the top of my head, but I can get you that number.
okay, because I know this is one of the attractions of buying it, the building was already on site.
Yeah. No, I mean, but the thing is, we've improved it. We've created a residence, because it wasn't a legal residence before, so we've created a residence there. It's a lot cheaper, it was a lot cheaper to create that residence than to build one somewhere else, so. And now we have an open space full-time ranger in one of the residents, we have an agricultural operator in the other residence, and we have Nordic and the agricultural operator in the commercial spaces, and it's working pretty well. And we do have it on our list to get solar on top of that, on top of the barn, to start offsetting all our electrical costs of that.
That's a future supplemental.
No, you approved
That's
it in the
there.
budget
We
for
did.
this
Oh,
year.
we already did. Great.
Are
You
you
did.
collecting revenues
I did.
off of it?
We are collecting rents off of both of them, and we base them off APSHA.
Okay,
So
well,
with a reduction because you're next to a snowcat and an agricultural operator, so it's not your most ideal, but our ranger is quite happy to be right on the Rio Grande Trail, so.
Great.
so I think, is that it for our supplementals?
That's it for the supplementals. We'll go
Okay.
to the Emma.
Great. We've used half our time. I think we
You're
can
still
get-
good.
We're still good for Emma, for both Emma issues. Great. Lindsay's up. Thanks, Matt.
Ted.
Ted, thanks, Ted. Okay, let's keep on moving. And Lindsay's here.
Do you want me to start?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just here to give an update on the Emma Store Building Steering Committee. In 2017, which feels like yesterday, but was 2 years ago now, we adopted a management plan for the Emma open space properties, including both sides of the highway. As part of that plan, we called out working with the steering committee on the programming and use for the store buildings themselves. During that time, we got a bunch of different ideas from the public on what could potentially happen in those buildings, but as you guys are well aware, there's a lot of different constraints and opportunities to work through on those buildings and what could happen there. So earlier this year, we put out a call for interested members of the public who would like to participate in that steering committee. We received, at that time, about 40 different individuals that were interested. So we put out a questionnaire to narrow that down. So then we received about 13 questionnaires back, and then this morning, our board picked 6 of those to participate in the steering committee. So as of this morning, our steering committee is comprised of 6 members of the public: Raul Gowries, Carolyn Ship, Harry Teague, Mitzi Repkin, Martha Ferguson, and Jason Smith. And then the Emma caucus appointed a representative and a backup representative. So their appointed representative is Liz Newman. Their backup is Margaret Simmons. And then the town of Basalt appointed staff Watkins, Folk Gray. And we also have a Historic Society liaison, Matt Annabelle, to participate in that committee. So that's 9 committee members. Michael is going to be the OSTB's rep on that committee. And then the goal is to start working with the committee collaboratively to look at what are the potentials for these buildings. Our first meeting will be a site visit later this month, hopefully. And then we will bring them back together a month later and kind of look at all the existing condition information we have and start to work towards having a recommendation for first the Open Space Board, and then if the Open Space Board's happy with that, to the BOCC finally for an approved use for the buildings.
And then the only caveats are, obviously, if options start emerging that are outside the open space board realm, well, obviously the BOCC is going to be heavily involved in that because, we have to live within our charter. And if there are options that are emerging that the community supports, we need to have a larger discussion with everyone about that and how to make that happen. It can happen. We can make it happen. There's a lot of options that we could do, but let's see where this goes. And, we'll see. There's a lot of constraints on the property. So in the end, there's opportunities, but there's constraints. Let's see what we can come up with as a community, and we'll be bringing this back.
George?
So I would make mandatory reading the end open space, the end master plan.
Okay.
Yeah, because we, from the original plan, we spent quite a lot of time in that area as a sub-area part of that plan, and of course, it's just been updated. So everyone should be familiar with it because there certainly are some constraints based on that plan.
Graham?
I think I'm reading in here that you're hoping to have something in a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it all goes, but we anticipated it could take up to a year.
Yeah. Better to do it well than quickly.
Yeah, and I think so right now the way we're looking at it is the first meeting would be a site visit, and after that we'd give them a packet of background information, including the master plan. We have traffic studies, we have historical report, we have a whole packet.
Great.
And then the next follow-up meeting, we can kind of discuss that as a group and see what other questions they have. We would anticipate that there may be additional studies we would need to look at to help answer some of the questions as part of working through the process, so it could take some time.
And all these meetings will be open to the public too. We're going to do it in public meeting places, so the public can come and see how the steering committee goes over time. And we'll be taking minutes, and we'll be definitely, we have the OST projects webpage, and that'll be updated with all this information, so the public will have all the background information too.
So they'll have the maps and the site plans and all that as well, accessible to the public. Great. Anybody else?
I got a question. Is CDOT going to be a player in this at all? And I ask it for a couple reasons. CDOT kind of created the situation we've got and we're working around. Can they be a partner in helping solve it?
Move the highway?
Well, that's one option. The other is sound barriers. and sound barriers all over high traffic areas. You see them in Denver, sound walls. I don't know whether that would make sense or not in this case, but I wouldn't want to see that not looked at as part of a solution to make this a more habitable piece of property.
Kind of hides the historic buildings.
Well, the hardest
You wouldn't
part
have to hide
is trying
those
to figure
historic
out.
buildings. You could do it with plexiglass.
I think that could be a question we work with the committee on,
Okay.
depending on what use
So
the
something
buildings
like
had.
that. All right, so you could have that on your, let's research and find out.
Yeah, I believe it's been brought up with CDOT in the past and what that is and what it looks like and how it's secured and not losing the trail that goes through there. Could we relocate the trail? I mean, that's all stuff we can discuss.
Well, and it was snow fencing, it wasn't sound barrier, it was snow fencing we were looking at.
Well, I
And
just-
we wanted to get we wanted to figure out what use was gonna be there before you put up any snow fencing, because the reality with the snow fencing, with that barrier being there and the trail there, it was gonna take a lot of work to create some snow fencing to block the snow from hitting that building. So that's why, in the interim, we put up the block that we have now, which after this last weekend I watched, it's getting hit pretty heavily with this heavy snow, so.
Is there any conversation, or part of the conversation, wildlife crossings? Is that, have any,
That's a totally different tract, but yes, the wildlife permeability with the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative, the big work with Colorado Natural Heritage Program that the county is funding, being a significant partner on, that is one area that potentially is a permeability issue, but I have to admit, we're getting a lot of good information from CPW about those pieces, and so we're gonna be looking at the entire valley for those and find out where they really will produce the most effect and where they're most effective, and, you know, it's more to come on that, but that is definitely one of those areas.
great. Do we need a nod of heads from both sides here?
Well, the Open Space Board
We've already
recommended
made
it this
You've already
morning.
made your recommendation.
So, yeah,
Okay.
we're just
On the list
looking
of
at the
candidates.
BOCC to kind of, are we okay with the process moving forward? Just direct.
George?
Well, just curious, so is this a committee that's appointed by the Open Space and Trails
Microphone.
Board, or is it does it have to be through resolution from the BOCC?
We were not thinking it was a resolution because we were thinking that this is a process that they don't have any binding, the committee doesn't have any binding, you know, if they vote to put a new hotel there, there's no binding. I mean, they're not a binding piece. So the Open Space Board, it's like what we did in Redstone. It's gonna come to a recommendation, and the recommendation's the BOCC will be the final decider on this.
Should we have an alternate? There's, 9 people and somebody could drop out in a year. Should we have an alternate who would kind of keep up to speed on the thing or not?
That's up to you guys. I mean, for us, we were thinking if everyone who submitted the questionnaire was pretty serious about being on this, and the people that you chose were pretty serious. And I think if we start having people drop out, we'll definitely be back to see about more. But I think right now 9 is pretty good. And if we drop down to 8, it might not be the end of the world.
Steve, Kelly, Rick, nods?
I'm good.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Great.
You guys
Thanks,
are moving
Lindsay.
through.
Thank you.
Okay. The next piece, we got some pictures. Which one?
It's gonna be my solution. That last one.
Okay, so we are back to talk about the Emma agricultural structures. Which one?
Okay.
This one?
Paul, just identify yourself when you're ready to go.
Yeah, my name is Paul Holsinger. I'm the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Administrator. And this is an update to what we spoke about back in December of last year. We had talked about increasing our budget to allow for agricultural structure to be developed on Emma open space to support our lessees. And back then we had 2 options that we had priced out, and one of them was to add some temporary sheds to the property, which is shown right here, to match an existing shed, which is in front right behind this Seed Start house. So we decided to increase our budget to account for these structures because the other option we had priced out was a prefab barn that is shown on the screen there. That was a 2-story lofted, I think it was a 32 by 48 structure. And just the prefab option cost that came in was $176,000 just for the shell of that structure. So we decided to go with this shed option so that these lessees could continue to produce and meet food safety standards. In the meantime, we put this out to bid, and we're surprised and got a new option here. And what we got back was another prefab option that was in our budget that reduced the size of the structure. So it made it a 1-story, and now it's a 24 by 32, so about 1,700 square feet. And it fit much better within the context of the property as well as our budget. This is coming in just under $70,000, and we'll have space in our $150,000 budget to finish that out with necessary washable surfaces and sinks that those lessees are going to need. So this is an update. We had 2 renderings done. So we were looking at this structure being placed back in this area behind. There's like a little dog-leg area of this open space. But looking at that, we saw, since it's a smaller structure, we could move it up and see what it looked like up front here. And based on the requirements of the construction, this site right here looks like it might be the better option. So we're still working through our contract and figuring out the specifics of the site location, but it seems like this is going to be the best spot for it, and it's going to give us better options, and the lessees there are going to be able to get their product out, meeting all the standards that they need to, and they will be, as we said before, they're going to be certified organic this year, and I think our program is excited to get this amenity out there to support this local food movement.
So,
Steve, question?
2 questions. The green area where it was located in the other picture, is that irrigated and potentially usable for orchard, more gardens, hay or whatever?
Yeah, so this that area that you can see now, it is irrigated, and it's irrigated because the lessees installed a upgraded irrigation system. So we have been irrigating it now with sprinklers, and we designated that area in our management plan as a possible orchard expansion if we get that far. But
so therefore, in this picture, that's actually a better location, not using good ground, and also it looks more accessible from the little road to. It's just like right there. Now this picture is different than the one you had in the other one. The other one had open sides on it for like a drive-through bay.
Yeah, they're both open. I think just because of the shadow, it looks like it's enclosed, but it's supposed to be just 2 awnings.
So it's a shed roof going over that equipment could be pulled in there and parked. And
yeah, and they'll do
there you can see it a little better. That you can. It's the same structure. It's just a shadow from the sun.
They're planning on doing some outdoor washing as well.
Okay. Is that an existing phone pole behind it, or something? It's an electric that's already existing?
It was there. We're thinking about taking that down.
what does this look like from the Cypress Creek Road? Because it doesn't have the other buildings blocking it from at least some angles.
Yeah, we didn't get the street view rendering, but based on what we can see from 82, it would it would be tough to see from 82. It would be visible from Soapers Creek Road, but if you look behind it, that kind of burnt out area, that sets quite a bit higher, and then behind that, that's where the home supply ditch comes across. So there's willows. So that ridge line or that roof line isn't going to be above those willows on the home supply. Of course, they can be cut down, but
Howie had a question?
Thanks. Flooring or the building surface, ground surface, will that be poured concrete?
yes, it'll be a concrete floor inside.
George?
So this is, it's a movable structure, but it's gonna,
This is a permanent structure.
this is a permanent
This is a
structure, because you
permanent
have a concrete bed, and you've got to get your water lines and electric lines, water lines going into it.
Correct.
Other questions, concerns?
So yeah, so what we're looking for is just kind of head nod to keep moving forward, because you guys already approved the budget. We're within the budget. We just want to keep everybody up to date. You asked us to keep you up to date on it, but we were moving forward with that.
Yeah.
Definitely better.
We've also updated our website, and I'll get a message out to the caucus as well.
So I think we're all good.
You guys are good? How are we doing over here? Goods
So-
on this side, George?
Yeah, that's fine. So is there an opportunity to, down the road, look at throwing some solar panels on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of the appeal of this is that it's a solid structure. It's going to be engineered to hold that weight. So, and we may get there sooner than later, depending on our budget. So,
We're gonna try to look at it, trying to put the solar sooner than later to do it, but it's definitely gonna be able to handle that.
That's great. Look, well, you've got nods from us.
Okay. Great.
thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Looks good. Enhancements at Emma.
It's going to be magenta.
The garden is.
Okay,
Yeah.
what's next?
I think we're done.
I think we're good there. Is that it
So,
for us?
you guys moved about a half an hour faster than I expected.
Oh, well, hey, we picked up some time, all things considered.
So yes, thank you.
Do you guys need to adjourn or anything?
We do.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
We're out.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's it. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Is that okay? Before we pick this back up? All right.
Enjoy your spring break.
Yeah.
blanked out. Ready when you are? Okay, and we're back, Tuesday, March 5th, work session, and we're going to skip up to future agenda review here. John Peacock.
Yeah, and this is probably going to go quick too, unless you guys have a lot of stuff. Just a note that the recommendation for the Basalt Library Board was to appoint Victoria, who you had interviewed jointly. That resolution will be coming back to ratify that decision on next Wednesday's meeting. A couple of you have expressed interest. The Eagle County Board had invited us to participate in a Ski with the Commissioners Day on March 14th. Just want to let you know that we are still working out the final details. It sounds like it may be up at Snowmass, actually. That's an okay thing, Greg.
I was going to try to steer him here because I've got a 12 o'clock.
Oh, you have a, okay.
So I was going to say, if you do
It wasn't a
John will-
comment about which side of the roundabout we were on.
I'm stuck in the middle anyway.
I'll be in Denver, so I won't,
Yeah. So
won't
we'll,
be there, unfortunately.
we'll keep getting you guys, we'll get that information to you as soon as it gets settled. I'm not sure on location or exact times just yet.
Can I ask about December or March 12th? It looks like we've got a open discussion that afternoon with Suzanne's going to come in and talk about the Après Music Festival. And I'm just wondering, are there invitees from Ski Company joining her?
Well, and we've got that up to 30 minutes. We may increase it more, and so we're still working with the applicants and also the public safety group on who needs to be there.
So I'm just thinking they should probably bring in decision makers.
Fair enough.
Yeah, okay.
We're the decision makers.
Well, no, decision makers on their end.
Is the, are the employee housing guidelines for the 12th, is that with regards to the hearing officer?
That's correct. So those will be, those were the guideline changes that include the hearing officer as well as a fine schedule. The city council had an opportunity to discuss that, and they had recommended some changes. So we'll be including that in the packet materials for you. And then it's really a decision as to whether you want to call those up for revision or whether you're okay letting them move forward as proposed.
Is that
Anything
it? That's
else?
all you
That's
got?
all I had for you, yeah.
I got a question, John. On the March 19th, we've got a prep for ELTC meeting, and I know I had cut David short last week because we had not allotted enough time if we were going to try to make some decisions for us going into ELTC. So I'm just curious whether 30 minutes is going to be enough time.
I guess I put the question back to you guys. If given the nature of the questions that were on the table, if you feel like we need more time to discuss those, it looks like we have time that day. It pushed back potentially a review discussions a little bit, but we could add 15 minutes or so.
Because I don't know what else he was planning on. I know what we didn't get to discuss was the intercept lot scenarios, but I don't know what else he had.
Well, there was.
Name of the park and ride?
Yeah, okay, name.
So,
Got through the
well,
signage.
there's 30 minutes
30
right there.
minutes,
There's
right.
no question about that.
Sensitive one, right?
But we could bump that up a little bit if we're running ahead. It's not a big deal that day. It doesn't look like you have a
Overflow law.
potential Healthy Rivers and Streams Citizen Board interview.
I know there's probably there are a couple more applicants, I think, who haven't gotten into that, so we may have a couple interviews then.
Yeah, and we've been trying to hold open spots on the agenda, so we'll see how those come in.
This could be the Newman intercept lot. We could just choose that in our next session and
Versus a Newman building.
Do you want a parking lot
I
named
lost
after
out on
you?
the
Get the
Newman
building.
building.
Okay, that looks good to me. Anything else?
That's what the room is, the run for
I would note our first applicant is in the room if you
Right,
guys want
I
to
see
do that really.
Charles is here. Yeah, so why don't we're going to shift over to citizen board interviews. Come on up, Charles, if you're ready. Good to see you. See you everywhere lately. Seems like it. Welcome.
No, we haven't. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Yeah, welcome. And Charles Cuniff is here interviewing for Board of Adjustment. Do we need Charlotte here for any reason? No, we don't. Okay, good. Let's go ahead. Welcome. Glad to have you here, and I'm going to open it up to our interviewers. Anybody want to
I'll start. Hi, Charles. Thanks for applying. You're a busy guy.
Yes.
And I'm really impressed with all of your community involvement, and most recently being part of our Aspen Vision Committee group, which is going to take some time. So given everything you have going on, what sort of piques your interest in serving on this particular committee?
I would say probably over the years, I've worked with Joanna since, I don't know, 30 plus years, maybe, something like that. And I'm quite familiar with the county regulations, county zoning regulations and the building permit regulations. I thought it would be good to put that wealth of knowledge to use to serve the community. That was my thinking, to serve the community, stay abreast of what the issues are. And it is not a time-consuming obligation. It's once a month, and that's when there are issues that come up. I don't believe that I need to do a lot of getting up to speed background research because I am so familiar with the rules and regulations. And most of the projects we're working on now have sustainability as a very large aspect to those projects. I'd like to promote that more, and I would just like to be involved.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Great. Kelly?
Hi. Have you had occasion, either personally or for clients, to come before the Board of Appeals?
Yes, a few times.
And how's that experience been?
Usually it was an odd lot line situation or a topographic oddity. It has not been very often, and it was due to unusual circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the board carried itself well? Did you feel that the outcomes were acceptable to you? And
yeah, I definitely do. I think the people that I've been in front of when I've come to the board have been very professional and very informed. And yes.
Thank you.
Steve?
So, Charles, there'd be a likelihood that at some point in time you'd have a conflict of interest for
Yeah.
a project that you're working on would go before the Board of Adjustment. And what would you do in that
I
situation?
would recuse myself. I would stay out of the fray and out of the conversation. And I trust that Joanna would make me as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right
I don't
answer.
think there's anything you can do in this community that doesn't have some potential of conflict. I mean, seriously.
Okay, you gave the right answer. I just was double checking.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I was really enjoyed. Hadn't read your bio before, but it's just so much fun to see. The provenance of how you got here. Tom Wells and Robin Molney, all these famous names from.
I've been
from
very
our-
fortunate.
Yeah, what a great crew of people to work with. So that's great. I clearly you'd be really an asset to the board. I don't have any other questions. I did want to bring up, how often do conflicts come up, because it seems like you're so involved in so many boards and so many activities in town. But
And a couple of the boards I've been involved with I'm terming out, so I was looking for other opportunities to serve that when those terms complete, which is within the next year.
great,
Yeah.
great. Well, it's nice to have
They
somebody
also
that's
say if you want to get something done, you give it to a busy person, right?
right.
exactly, and have such perspective on the community. You've been here and engaged long enough that I think you get us, right?
I hope so, for sure.
Yeah, great. Hey, well, I'm fine with that. We'll have a decision point up soon, and we'll get back to you. Are there any other questions, though? Are we good? It's probably all. I'm satisfied.
I think your record speaks for itself, how
Thank you.
the great things you have participated and are participating in.
Thank you.
And actually, I think people who are busier, they're better at time management, and they're able to take on more responsibilities as a consequence. So
I believe, if you can, you should, and if you should, you must.
Right. Then you add some small children to the mix.
Yes. I want to set a good example for them as well.
There you go. There you have it. Yeah, great. Hey, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time as well.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, and that was moving right along here. And then, John, is that John?
Yes.
Okay, if you're ready, come on up. Love to
Yes, I
talk to
am.
you.
Thank you, folks, for having me. I'm John Prozonic, and I guess I'm applying for a position on the Water Board.
Healthy Rivers and Streams
Healthy
Board,
River
right?
and Streams.
And your name's pronounced Prozonic?
Prozonic, yes.
Prozonic, okay.
My wife says when we win a lottery, she'll put another vowel in there. Those Polish names get a lot of vowels in there.
I would just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what your interest is in the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board.
Well, I've had a condo here in Aspen for about 30 years, and for a while I worked at the hospital. I was an anesthesiologist at the hospital for about 7 years, and about 10 years ago moved back to Santa Barbara, where I was an anesthesia director for an outpatient center. And I retired last May, and my wife and I moved back here. Both my sons live out here. Do a lot of fly fishing. I know that there's a lot of water issues with the Bighorn River up in Montana, where I fish a lot. There's a lot of water issues with the Frying Pan and the Roaring Fork. And I thought in retirement, this would be a wonderful opportunity to volunteer for a position on the board, because I think water is very important, and there's a lot of people who want the water, both fly fishermen and farmers and developers for houses and things like that. So I think there's some very interesting topics there, and I would like to get involved in it. And since I really don't have a lot to do except ski and fly fish, I think this would be a good way to give back to the community.
Great. Questions? Steve?
Well, thank you so much for applying. I'm curious if you participate in various groups such as Trout Unlimited or American Rivers or other groups that have dealings with river issues. And
I am a member of Trout Unlimited, but I haven't really done very much. Because when I was working in Santa Barbara, I was working full-time as a physician, and that really occupied most of my time. But I have kept track of the different issues, and especially in the Bighorn River, there's a lot of issues, pretty much the same we have here with the Frying Pan about water flows. And I haven't done a lot until now, but hopefully I'll get more involved.
okay, and it probably is useful that you're retired and do have some free time. There are a lot of meetings of water groups that happen periodically in or near the Roaring Fork Valley, and when I've attended those, oftentimes there would be a member of the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board there just listening and learning about the issues. So those opportunities would be available to you. Certainly not required for being on the board, but it's just more for your general education.
Well, I come in as a neophyte as far as being on a board like this. I was a chemical engineer before I went into medicine. I worked for Union Oil Company in Los Angeles. So I do have a technical background in the sense that, I can calculate flows and acre feet and things like that. But I would welcome going to a lot of these meetings to get background, because I haven't a lot of background. I've been saving newspaper clippings from the Aspen Times when they talk about water, but this is a new thing for me. But I'm confident that I can integrate with the board and learn a lot about this.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly?
Let's see.
Steve's
I
still
do
got
have one more thing. In our packet, John, it says you would represent District 5, but he actually lives in Snowmass Village, which would be Commissioner District 4. And we don't have anybody from District 4 right now. This doesn't involve you personally, it's more our internal discussion.
I do live
here.
in Snowmass Village. Yeah, that's where I live.
So that would just change from a 5 to a 4, which actually would be good for the board to get a greater geographic distribution from where people live. They have different viewpoints about the rivers, so.
Kelly?
Yeah, so I can relate to being a neophyte. I am as well, and water is a huge topic and very confusing in the West. I guess my question is: the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board has kind of an interesting quorum requirement, with 3 out of 5 Pickens County residents being required for business purposes. And so, do you have travel? Like, do you have lots of travel that you plan, or because the meetings are once a month, and we want to just ensure that that board can keep moving forward with its decisions.
Everybody asks me now that I'm retired how much traveling I'm doing. And the answer is, once I got here, there's skiing and fly fishing and hiking and bicycling, and both my boys live here. So I'm not much of a traveler. I mean, I have traveled some. About the only trip that I can say that my wife and I usually take is, she has a farm back in Indianapolis, or in Indiana. We go back for the Indy 500 every year. So usually we take a 3 or 4 week trip and drive back to the farm and go to the Indy and visit friends, because we lived in Indiana for a while. And that's probably about the only definite thing that we would have is around the weekend of the race.
Sure.
But other than that, I mean, I'm really flexible. I mean, I can go fishing and skiing anytime. It's, I can make the meetings. I'm not. I might miss 1 or 2 a year,
Of
but
course.
I doubt I'll miss more than that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
George, questions?
Thanks. No, thanks for replying, John.
Welcome.
One of the perhaps unusual aspects of this committee is there's a funding mechanism which provides grant opportunities. I don't know if you're familiar with that in your clippings.
I did read about it on the website about grants and about the board looking at the grants and then advising the commissioners, the water commissioners, as to whether they think something is a good idea or not. But that's basically all I've read.
Yeah, because I was just kind of curious if you just off the top of your head, if you were to try to prioritize how you'd want to try to allocate dollars and grants to one or different aspects of our water plan. There is a water plan for that was been put together by the Roaring Fork Conservancy as well for the valley. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, and I would really like to request any literature that you have. I mean, if you have a stack of literature, you can email it to me or mail it to my home. I would be glad to peruse all of that, because I have, except for knowing the broad, overview of water issues, I don't have any specifics, and I'm a neophyte at this. But I certainly, you can send me all the data you want. You can send me maps and everything, and I would be glad to look at them and educate myself as to exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to doing a lot of reading as a physician, so.
Be careful what you ask for. There's so much.
No, it's a fascinating topic. I mean,
Yeah.
there are, you obviously have the sportsmen who want water in the rivers for kayaking and for fishing and things like that, but you also have agricultural needs and you also have industrial needs. And I think, all of these needs, are justified, and you just have to see which ones override the others. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the rivers. We were down in Salida doing some fly fishing last summer, and they have a great water park down there in Salida. And also on the Gunnison, there's a big water park up there. And I think they've integrated that really well into the community. I mean, it's fun for the kayakers and the swimmers and the fishermen. But, everyone needs the water. And I think you have to look at every case individually and decide what's worthwhile and what's not.
Have you been down to our water park in Basalt?
I've seen that project the last 3 or 4 years. And I, in all honestly, have not walked along the banks to see what they were doing. But I know it seemed to start and stop and start and stop. And I would be interested to see what they're proposing down there. The problem that I see with that water park, and this is just off the top of my head, is that, we're a freestone stream here. We get everything from the mountains. It's not dam controlled. The frying pan contributes maybe 100 cubic feet a second to the river. In fact, I think that might even be upstream, that might be downstream of where the water park is. And I wonder how many months that water park can really work effectively as a water park. Because in the summer, when it gets dry, you might not have enough flow or you might not have enough flow for a kayaker to really enjoy that area. But that's one question I have.
When you delve more into it, you'll understand a little bit more on the provenance of that water park. It's the recreational in-channel diversion, as it's called, which is a unique category for a water right. And so that was put there specifically for a water right, which necessitated having boat activity. So it may have not have been the obvious choice right off the bat for a water park, but it made a lot of sense to get the water right so we could pull the water down that far. So it's fascinating. You're gonna find a lot of interesting things if you pursue this. The other thing I was going to say is we do have several groups, as were pointed out in the Valley, doing studies, some really interesting GIS mapping involving healthy rivers and Roaring Fork Conservancy and the biodiversity study and the Aspen watershed plan, whatever that one is called. There's a lot of moving pieces to this, and so you'll find there's some interesting stuff, a lot of interesting people. The thing that I thought was interesting about your application is that often it seems like we're looking for people from the fishing community, the recreation community, to get involved in some of these issues. And in some cases, it seems like they're not present, like when we're trying to figure out how to best care for the frying pan, but with aquatic nuisance species, for instance, and the fishing community is not present in the discussion. And you think, wow, this could destroy their fishery. Where are they all? So, maybe there's some bridging you could do as well.
I know a lot of the people at Taylor Creek and also at Frying Pan Anglers.
Right. Sure.
But I know a lot of people at Taylor Creek. If I'm on the board, I certainly will try to interface with them because I'm sure they have ideas.
Sure.
The big thing about the pan, at least the 30 or 40 years I fished it, is that the winter flow rates are so low that the aquatic invertebrates that live on the bottom can't deal well with a 25 cubic foot per second flow. I think it's 65 now, but it looks less. I was up on the pan the other day, and it looked a lot less than 65. But if you run it real low, it kills the invertebrates, and then the fish don't have anything to eat, and then the whole ecosystem dissolves.
Right.
And fishing, certainly in this valley, is a lucrative thing for the fly shops and the motels and everything else.
Yeah,
but again, that's I feel strongly about fishing, but I would look at every item on the agenda, not necessarily from a fisherman's perspective, because I recognize that agriculture and industry also need water, and you can't say one is more important than the other. It has to be a balance. The Bighorn Alliance up in Montana and I fish a lot up there in Montana. They have a huge study going on now about how much water they release from Yellowtail Dam. The last couple of years, a normal flow for Yellowtail Dam is 3,000 cubic feet a second. They've mismanaged the dam and the storage capacity so that in May and June and July, they're dumping 14,000 cubic feet per second, where the average is 3. So there's a huge problem there. And I have followed that more than I have here in the valley because I'm up there a lot.
Got it. Well, maybe this will give you an opportunity to spend more time here.
One last question. How familiar are you with Colorado water law, which is unique of all the water laws in the whole United States, probably?
I think from what I've read, there is more written about water law in Colorado than any other topic in the library. So I know it's quite complex. I know that, but I don't know a huge amount of water law. But again, this is an opportunity for me to learn, and I love reading, and I love, being involved with people in discussion. So what I need is data, though. If there's anything you folks can funnel me, maps or information or anything, I'd be glad to access that and read it.
Have you met Lisa yet? Who's our Lisa? It's Lisa McDonald here. She's our liaison. Yeah, she's our liaison for the Healthy Rivers and Streams. So if you connect with her and she'll download as much as you want to take, I think. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming in. This is great. We'll make a decision probably in the coming weeks, and we'll be getting back in touch.
Listen, I appreciate meeting with the council and meeting you all, and I hope I'm on the board. I think that would be an interesting way to spend some time giving back to the community, and I enjoy being on it.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Right. Have a good afternoon.
Hi, Lisa. I'm John.
Okay. All right, and then is that Cindy? You're Cindy? All right, come on down. Thanks for coming in. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye, Jen.
I don't know, after listening to him, I think I'm out of my realm.
Maybe, maybe not. Please introduce yourself for our microphones for the.
Okay, I'm Cindy Kerr. I lived in Basalt almost 27 years. My mother was born and brought up in Aspen, so I've been coming up here since I was a child. And the reason why I applied is because after listening to Stacy Kraft at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I love Basalt and the thought of becoming another Durango with that mudslide coming down the mountain. I thought, well, it might be good for me to get involved. So that's one reason why I volunteered. And it's good to volunteer to do something. So that's
Great.
why I'm here. But after listening to him, it's like, ooh, I don't have those kind of qualifications. I don't know a lot about Colorado water law. I'm just a concerned citizen.
Right. Yeah, well, don't count yourself out yet. It's great to have all perspectives. Kelly.
Sure. Can you talk about how you engage with the waters around where you live, or the river?
Well,
through
I live
Basalt?
a block from the water park, and I have been down to the water park, and it's fabulous what was created down there. It's a great picnic area. I love the fact that they built that there. So, and it's really handy for me. So I go down there. It's nice.
Steve, questions?
Let's see, I was curious, first of all, where exactly do you live? We have these slots that we fill on the board, and one of them is just for a Roaring Fork watershed person, so someone could actually live in or Garfield County and qualify to be on this board. But which part of Basalt do you live in?
I live in Picken County.
In the
I
Picken
live in
County
Elk Run.
side?
I live in Elk Run on Lauren Lane, and I've been there. I started out at, in the Arbor Park Townhomes in 1991. Then we built our home about a block away from there. So I've been there for a long time.
Okay, and then you have quite a bit of accounting experience, it looks
Yes,
like.
yes.
A lifetime of accounting experience. So how do you think you could use that to contribute to the board?
Well, they're trying to find money I've never written a grant, but I know that grants are available to help out with certain things. And I'm really hoping that a grant can be created to maybe clean up the lead up at the shooting range. I'm hoping that maybe some accounting experience would help finding money.
Also, the board also hands grants out. We have to have a budget, an annual budget that they use to disperse monies to worthwhile projects. So there's certainly some financial expertise is useful.
Okay.
George, question?
Thanks for applying, Cindy. You didn't fill in, there was a section here on the application for organizational membership information, any offices or boards that you've served on in the past. Can you?
I haven't served on any boards. And in fact, I've been bringing up my children, working full-time. And so now that I'm older, both my kids are married and gone. Now I feel it's my turn to try to, give back a little bit. So I'm just getting my feet wet.
Okay, and then are there any other areas of interest of yours if for some reason you did not get selected to be on the Healthy Rivers and Stream Board? Are there other areas in the community, in the county that you think you'd be interested in serving on?
Well, I haven't really looked, but if you know of something where I might fill a spot or a void, then I would look at it and apply for it. I mean, I know you have a Citizens Financial Board, but I have to admit, it really interests me to be because I have friends who are fly fisher guides, and I fell in the Roaring Fork River a few years ago, and I developed MRSA. And so that concerns me. I don't even know why that happened, but it concerned me that I got so sick falling in the Roaring Fork River. So to me, it's an important aspect. I mean, I'm hoping I could be useful, but
All right, great, thank you.
did not have the experience listening to him.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Often we get people who have a background in biology or stuff like that, but, you know, not to discount you. So, yeah, I think what your skills clearly would be helpful. I did want to say, as when George mentioned it, I can throw out the following citizens boards have vacancies, just to throw it out there if it's interesting. Board of Adjustment, Election Commission, Financial Advisory Board, in addition to Healthy Rivers and Streams, Planning and Zoning, Redstone Historic, wouldn't make sense, the Retirement Board, Senior Services Council, Translator Advisory Board, Noxious Weed Advisory Board. So we have several board openings, just so if you know anybody else who's interested. But thank you for applying for this one. It's a great board. I've been on it, and I found it to be fascinating and an incredible learning experience. So as they all are, you know, you start meeting people and you get really deep dives into some interesting topics. So thank you for applying. And you're concerned about mud flows in the river, very timely, and it's great to see that interest coming from Basalt after the fire.
I mean, that's why I applied, because that
Yeah.
really concerns me, actually, so.
Excellent. George?
Yeah, I actually have a question for Lisa. Come on up. Come on down.
Yeah, if you haven't met Lisa yet, yeah. So Lisa administers our Healthy Rivers and Streams Board.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So we have, it looks like we've got 2 vacancies open, and we have a renewal that will be coming up. So what's the status of our advertising for slots?
Well, Charlotte does all the advertising for the citizen board, so I know we're putting out a little, I think she maybe upped it a little bit. I talked to Pat a little bit too about doing some more, maybe putting something in the paper just to, because Dave's position has been open since June, you know, we hadn't got a lot of interest. But now we have another 3 people, I think, that have just recently applied. Ruthie Brown, actually, I reached out to her and some of the fly fishing folks, and so I think it's starting all of a sudden to generate, you know, maybe get the word out there, so.
So I guess I'm asking, are you, would we think about keeping the application process open for another month or so, or?
Probably, and then with the renewals in September, I don't know if we'll just keep everything open or, you know, how the manager's office wants to handle that, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to wait.
Sorry. I think for the vacancies, our recommendation would be to, you know, interview the candidates that have applied and make appointments for the vacancies as appropriate and separate the renewal.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I was just kind of curious if we're going to keep the, sort of the application process open for the vacancies for another month, in terms of timing.
Yeah, I would think another month, especially with some of the upcoming, you know, applicants that we have and timing.
Just getting time in the agenda to interview them. I know Charlotte told me it was tight, so that makes sense.
Well, we do have on March 19th, future agendas, Healthy Rivers and Streams Citizen Board interview tentative listed on the agenda right now, so.
You know,
Yeah, I don't know that she's set those time, you know, if the applicants can come in that day.
So we might have to actually wait until, you know, if there's an applicant being interviewed, then we'd have to wait to decide.
I wanted to encourage you, Cindy, because I remember when Dave Nixa came on the Healthy Rivers Board, I think he really kind of went through all of our was it the grant making or budgeting or
The
probably
grant criteria we rewrote.
and it was a feat of accounting and detail that was gratifying to see, and it's the sort of thing you might really enjoy being involved in something like that. So I think it's great you're here. I wanted to ask you, who is your mom?
Lucille Wagner. Tony
Okay.
Wagner's my cousin.
Oh, okay.
So everybody knows Tony.
You're part of the big family in the valley.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so I've been coming up here since I was a child, so I
From-
love it up here,
From
and
where?
I would hate to see.
Where were you?
Denver.
You were in Denver, okay.
I was in Denver. In fact, my cousins up here moved to Denver, and my sister and I moved up here out of Denver, and
Excellent.
yeah, I love it here. So, in fact, I think you gave me a tour of the Craig Ranch when you were living there. I was
might
with Debbie
have. It was
Timroth.
a long time ago.
Yeah,
Oh
a
my
long
God.
time ago.
Like 1990 or 89.
Yeah, it was a
'Cause
long
that was your
time ago.
cousin's family home.
Yeah.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. How exciting is that?
Yeah. So.
Thanks
So
for the
anyway,
reminder.
I'm very concerned, and I'd love to participate if I make it, or if
Thanks
have
for
a
coming
spot
in.
for me.
We'll get back to you. We're going to interview everybody and then
Oh,
we'll make
good.
a decision and be in touch.
And if you see another board that you think I might qualify for or something,
Oh, we got a whole
Throw-
list of them here. Don't we?
so just throw my name in the hat.
Great.
Thank you very
for
much.
coming. Really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's it for interviews for the day. We've done our future agendas, I think, and Jody's here. Unless somebody needs a break, we can just launch right into our,
You need to ask.
oh, do we need a download from you?
Can I just have 1 minute?
Of course.
For open discussion before Jody goes. I
Yeah.
just wanted to announce to the board today that we've been awarded funding in the amount of $350,000 for improvements out at the Whitewater Park from GOCO grant
Wow.
that we applied for. So that will be officially announced tomorrow at their GOCO retreat in Trinidad, Colorado. So but
Cool.
we've gotten word from the Park and Planning Program Officer that we were awarded the
So you need a nod of heads to whether or not we want to
No.
accept this?
We actually already
Congratulations.
appropriated it in the budget, so
Yeah.
it was a calculated risk.
Yeah.
Well, we'll think about it. Okay, we'll do it.
So we'll be coming back to you with, more on that, but I just
Oh,
wanted
great.
to put the word out. Pat's working on a press release for tomorrow.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well done. Your hard work pays
A
off.
good crew worked on it. I didn't do a whole lot. They all did it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is anybody going over to the GOCO or is this their
Well,
retreat?
it's in Trinidad, so I don't know if I can make it over today or tomorrow, but
Oh,
it's in Denver,
350
which
grand.
is closer.
George?
Oh, another question. Back to future agendas. It just reminded me because I'm trying to find this now,
That
but
it? Okay.
we had a
Thanks,
time
Lisa.
slotted for an update from the grant we gave to the water education, the kids program.
Lisa, this might be you.
On the
Oh, yeah.
19th, I think.
Sarah
Sarah Johnson.
Oh,
is
Sarah
coming.
Johnson's coming
I
up.
saw that someone
Come
was
up to a mic
It's on
here.
it's on
On
one
the
of our
19th.
future agendas.
On the
I know.
19th.
on the 19th, and just my question is because we have an hour scheduled for that.
Right, well, last time when she came in, I think we went over on that, so we just wanted to have enough time to be sure that we were, she's got a whole presentation, and then the funding request, she's gonna come in for some funding that the River Board is recommending to continue
Oh,
the
okay.
program next year.
Oh, so it's a combination.
So
Yeah.
we'll fill an hour.
Okay.
It might be close, yeah, so we wanted to
Okay, great,
make sure
thank
we
you.
had enough time. Cool,
All right.
all right.
Thanks, George, for bringing that up. Okay, now we have the star of the courthouse. Here to discuss the blindfold issue. The ongoing scandal. The blindfold.
Luckily, I'm not
You don't
involved
know
in
about
the
the ongoing
blindfold.
blindfold at the courthouse scandal with
Oh.
Justice has not had her blindfold on for 140 years
Yeah,
now.
usually
Only
Lady
one.
Justice has a blindfold on, but the minors, I think as the story goes, didn't believe Justice was blind, and so ours does not have a blindfold.
But it's maybe one of the
Well, and
few.
at the recent swearing in, I think Judge Fernandez Ely talked about that. She said, here in Pitkin, our eyes are wide open.
Yeah, there she is, right?
There she is.
Okay.
Thank you. Jody Smith, I'm the facilities director and the project manager on the courthouse renovation project. Today I just wanted to take 10-15 minutes to give you an update on 4 items that we're working on for the courthouse. But I also thought I'd just take this super quick second to talk about the library and the South Side building, just so you guys know where both of those are. The library elevator modernization project has been going on since February. So the elevator that goes down to the parking garage, the public parking garage, has been closed. We are scheduled to have a inspection or final inspection on Thursday, and hopefully that'll be turned over to us on Friday, and it will be open again. So I just wanted to put that out to the public and let them know that will be open. That other elevator, the interior one that's been clunking for about 20 years, and there's always been a sign in there saying, "Don't mind the clunk. We know about it." It's been fixed. So
Doesn't clunk anymore.
no.
Well, it plays a tune now.
Yeah. It's funny because we've had so many people look at that over the years and nobody fixed it. And this company came in and I think they spent a couple of hours on it and got it fixed. So
Great.
It'd be a good title for a book, Things That Go Clunk in the Library.
Yeah. The other thing, I'd just like to take a quick opportunity. In late last year, Picken County purchased 351 Southside building, which it's on Southside Road, 351. And that is now our telecommunications department's offices. It's a very large building, and it's a commercial and a residential zoned building. So we have a two-bedroom apartment upstairs, very nice, and then the rest of it is designated for county. The lower level is the translator, or now the telecommunications department operations there. And then on the upstairs, we have a meeting room that will hold 10, 12, 14 people, maybe a little tighter. And then we have a small meeting room that would hold up to 5 comfortably. And then we have 3 touch-down spaces with just, a desk and plug in your laptop. So that'll all be coming online in the next week, but the construction is done. It was minor construction to make it all work. So we're there, they're moved in, and it's happening.
And just to add on to what Jody's saying, we are going to have a calendar going up on March 10th for those who want to use that Mid-Valley meeting space. I'd say it can probably seat 12 to 16, that larger meeting room.
Yeah, there's 12. I think we could get 14 chairs in there, and then some people might need to sit on the bench if there's a bigger meeting.
Yeah, but it does allow for some Mid-Valley convenings that we haven't had the opportunity for, and so Charlotte will have access to that if you guys want to use that.
Now, this will be open to the public or just for who can use this space?
This will be for county staff or electeds to schedule meetings, and if there are members of the public part of those meetings, they would have access. But because of the mix of the telecommunications and such, we're not opening it up to the public.
Steve?
I was just thinking it would be nice to have a tour there, but maybe if we did it when we do the Basalt Vista project meeting with the school board in
It is
May,
right on the
would
way
be a
there,
good time. Just allow an extra half hour early to go by there, and we could all have a tour.
We can certainly do that, and it's right on the way either to or from Basalt Vista.
And how's the parking?
On-street parking.
On-street parking?
Yeah.
Okay.
And your access card, your security card will get you into the building.
Okay.
So,
great.
So if you happen to go down there tonight, you can take a peek in.
Great.
Actually, I don't have you set up yet, but.
After March
After
10th.
March 10th.
A couple days.
George?
Well, just as an aside, since we're talking about the translator department, and I sent Jeff an email yesterday morning because all the TV channels have been out, and he thought the issue was up on Sunlight, but they were still out this morning, so I was just curious what.
Yeah, so we've been having some issues up there, George. The Sunlight construction was not completed, and so the equipment was in a temporary, either the old or temporary structure. And what we think is happening is it is intermittently getting too cold in the building, and the equipment is freezing out. And so we've been losing and getting stations back with temperature. I know they were going up to see if there's anything they could do about it, and that issue should be resolved once we finish construction, placing.
Yeah, this wasn't a question of some channels going in and out. All the channels were completely out.
well, that probably means all the equipment froze then, but we'll look into that. That wouldn't be something Jody would probably have an update on.
Yeah.
But we
okay.
can certainly pass it on to Phyllis and Jeff.
Yeah, because people are probably wondering what's going on. If it's one or two channels, it's one thing, but when everything is completely out, no one knows what's going on.
Weather situation. Yeah.
Okay, on
great.
to the courthouse.
On to the courthouse. Oh, right.
So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the asbestos and lead removal update, north side landscaping. The north side is, of course, between the jail and the courthouse. I want to talk to you just a little bit about the steam engine located in the courthouse lobby, and then my plan for core assessment. So the asbestos and lead removal, we got 6 proposals this week, which was really good. We are well within our budget, even better. All of the work, we're looking again, I think I talked about this last week, but the work will probably be scheduled in late May, early June. There might even be some holiday work there where they can maybe knock that out on Memorial Day weekend, although City of Aspen doesn't typically grant a waiver for that. So we'll be working closely with the City of Aspen to see what waivers we can get for after hours, weekend work, and so that we can minimally impact the courts and their operations. During that work, however we phase it, there will be a daily air quality testing. So if they mitigate or remove the asbestos and lead in 2 rooms, we will come in and clear that as safe before we open in the morning for the public. And then we'll just continue to do that. I had asked, can we just kind of do the testing and then do an overall testing? Well, what typically happens is that each area just is deemed clear, and we don't have to then do a whole building. But as we get further on, if there's concerns or anything, we can always adjust that. But it will be deemed safe or clear every day before. They will have plastic tents up and barriers. We're going to do all of the staging will be on this, either on the west side, depending on their trucks and the vents, the equipment to pressurize the building when they're doing that. So it'll be on the north or west side, and we'll work with staff and courts. You can't really leave that big truck running outside with those the generators with the courts in session. So again, we want to minimize the disruption. However, they do know there will be some disruption. And then neighborhood outreach has already begun. I talked to the new owner of the lower level next door, and he's on the board of that homeowners association. So we'll start to get all of those out. He was really excited to hear we were going to do something and that he's in the loop because he is a brand new owner. So that'll continue.
Is that at Obermeyer or what?
No, it's this little building. I don't know what that building's called.
That's actually the Rio Grande building with tasters in it, or?
No, right.
Just across Galena.
Where the
Yeah.
bank
Right there,
is and the realtor.
Real estate offices, yeah.
Yeah, there's real estate, and then there's that housing one.
Right.
So we'll be reaching out to them. Of course, the police department, Overmeyer. I don't know that will impact Overmeyer too much, but we'll make sure we know.
You're staging it on that end then also. Got it, okay.
Yeah, and that will only be the beginning of the outreach, because then FCI takes over and starts to do their outreach. There will be a big sign posted throughout the project of the project manager or the project superintendent's number, so that he can be called whenever anything's happening. So, the north side landscaping plan, you can see where the hash line is in, where's my mouse? I don't know.
Does the mouse, yeah, I don't
Might
know
not
how
be
they
there.
get the mouse to work on that.
So it is that hashed line there. So where the circle, where the parking, where the driveway comes in on the left-hand top side there, That is a system where it's pavers and for the fire lane, along with grass, so that it keeps it a nice, beautiful, but safe access for the fire truck. Looks like they'll be adding some trees. You can see on that the canopy will remain. The Historic Preservation Office or review for land use did not recommend that it come off. They do want a couple of items on the back of that building to be closed up. We have some ugly conduits and some penetrations in the courthouse that they had requested be taken care of. So we'll certainly look at that. They also want to know how that stair is going to be attached, so we'll give them that information. And then you can see on the right-hand side where that looks like there's a planter going from the jail to almost the stairs there. That is a visual barrier. And then the sidewalk from the jail to the courthouse, that is that corridor that we were talking about, that keeps the transport of detainees outside of the public. So I will have another update on this in a few weeks, and that might give us more of a 3D, so you can actually see what the trees might look like. And from that again, I wanted to let you see how this lines up with facing east, and then how that entry faces east and goes in.
Will they be keeping the screening on the canopy? I guess it's called the canopy with the Sally
That
Port.
lattice work?
Yeah, is that lattice?
Yeah.
That always looks so temporary to me, and maybe, I don't know if that's going to be the final. Maybe it's fine. But
I think we can certainly look at that. It's not part of the plan now. What it does for us, and because this has been our only ADA access over the years, is that it keeps snow from drifting in.
Sure.
Especially knowing that we need to be able to be accessible. So we can certainly look and see if we can give that a facelift at some point. I know I had asked my staff over some period of time to get rid of it and just replace it and make it look fresh, and because it's somewhat broken up.
Right.
So,
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Again, I just wanted to give you just a little reminder on the north facade emergency exit stairs. Again, we'll be giving information to the city land use on that. They also wanted to know what these sidewalks would be. Would they be a paver system? Would they be just gray concrete? And I think for this backside, our intent is to do concrete. They are asking us what we would do on the front side, the south side, where we're doing that new lift, if, where that concrete is all busted up and it's, we're going to replace that, and they want to get a feel from you guys if we want to do just gray concrete, or do we do more of that paver system like what's on the west side of the courthouse. As we develop that, I'll come to you, but I think we wanted to keep the character of the pavers, so it looks like the west side, the brick.
Are you talking about the project that the city just completed?
Yeah.
The pavers,
Yeah.
and then replacing the stamped concrete that's kind of deteriorated there in
Yeah.
front of the courthouse.
Just that piece.
So it might be good. We'll bring that back to you, but it might be good for the board as you're walking around to kind of pay attention to that and envision that.
Great. And I'm thinking regarding the different with the paved the concrete in the back of the building. Is there a drainage issue? Do you want something permeable, or is there drainage taken care of back there?
We do have drains under the canopy, and we have drains, and that would be all part of if we don't have the right drainage, they'd have to put it in. Certainly, again, we could do something that's more permeable, like this whole Galena Plaza has been done.
Right. And that's been there long enough. We know if it freezes and thaws, still works in the winter.
Yeah.
So.
This whole thing will be snow melted. So what that really means is that we have to pour a layer of concrete, then we put the snow melt, and then we put the pavers on top of that. So you're not really gaining as much of the penetrable
Got it. Maybe it
surface
doesn't
that you're
matter.
looking for, because
You have a concrete
and you want it
foundation.
to be stable.
Now, when you're talking about snow melt, are you the entire area that's with grass, or the entire area that's just?
No, just the sidewalk,
The
just the
sidewalk
walkways.
is the snow melt,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Got it.
again, that's for that public safety element, to keep the public and the officers safe, regardless of the hour of night.
Where are they connecting from the jail to the courthouse? On here?
Straight out the
Does this
canopy,
mouse
or do you
work
take
on
that?
here?
John knows how to get that.
Pointer. Oh, right here. Oh.
No.
Sometimes you get a cursor, but I'm not sure how.
Got
There
it.
you go.
There it is.
Thank you.
Fancy. Okay.
Look at that.
So, wow, this is cool. So this is the jail, and they come out through here, and they take the detainees into the courthouse here.
Got it.
This is an emergency exit. So it's a routine exit for the officers. They come out of the sheriff's office, they come down the stairs. This way they can go right into the jail if they need to go in, or they can go right into the courthouse and go to the courts, or what they've been doing is that they've been coming out and going to their patrol cars here, which I think their intent is to still use this parking. What we've noticed with this temporary situation is that they're really using this a lot, and it's icy. So we want to make sure that that is. And then also, if there is a fire alarm or some emergency where we want to evacuate the building, this is the egress. So they would come out, all the public coming from, well, whoever, staff would go down that stairwell, and then they would come here, and then they would go out this gate, which is just like a press bar, like what we have, just press bar to get out of there and go. The cops would then use their card access to get in and out of this gate here. So that's kind of the plan right now. We still need to cook it and make sure it all works and flows. The idea when we were working with Mr. Detweiler on this admin project was that they would come out here and they would just go down this sidewalk straight out. And I may have them shift this because this is already a corridor, and then that gives us more flexibility down here. So unless you all have a...
My comment would just be regarding the snow melt. Always makes me wonder, how much snow melt will it be, and what's the footprint? What's in lined up with our carbon mitigation or our climate action plan. And I'm just wondering if there are options to do like a passive snow melt with there are ways of doing it that may not require pumping energy into it, but just using the geothermal energy from beneath. And as long as somebody's looking at that and rules it out, if it's not feasible.
That's coming up on our next slide. Well,
Yeah, okay,
2 slides
see,
from now.
I'm teeing you up.
Any
Great.
questions on this?
Anybody?
Again, we'll come back. You'll see a 3D where you'll actually get to see how it looks.
Great.
The next item, I just wanted to do a check-in with you, the board. This steam engine, which is called the Shaw Bottle Steam Engine, it has a plaque on it. It does belong to the Aspen Historic Society, I believe. But due to our constraints in this lobby, the security checkpoints, all of the programming for safe traffic and travel in the building, the offices, staffing, we are recommending that we return the steam engine to the Historic Society and or the owner of this. This conversation did come up a few years ago, probably when you were first here. No. So it's probably been 10 years, and we got a lot of pushback on not removing this from the courthouse. So I just wanted to bring it to the board to kind of ask your direction. It has no history within the courthouse. It is historical for our community, but it doesn't really tie to the courthouse. I know that I had made a recommendation 10 years ago to put it outside. You can see that they, 1973, when the school actually upgraded it or restored it. So, I'm sure they don't want it outside either, but it could end up being, coming back to the board, and I just wanted to know,
My feeling, I would say that it certainly has historical significance, and too bad the Coke sawmill isn't there anymore. But why couldn't the Historical Society display this at the Meralt or on their premises? I think that might, if we're cramped for space, our security system is going to be 2 or 3 times the size of this thing,
Right.
and we're trying to squeeze it in the same place. It'd be a shame, but maybe there's a better location for it. Steve?
Yeah, I've been concerned about that steam engine because I believe my dad was one of the ones who helped muscle it into place there.
Oh, it's heavy.
And I've been wondering if we probably don't have room out in our lobby here, but if we did, I would put it right out here someplace. Barring not being able to do that, I would put it in a prominent place in maybe the Merle Barn or maybe over at the Stollard House Museum or someplace where the Aspen Historic Society could take care of it.
What about your house?
Sure.
There's not a lot of public traffic coming in to see it.
Let's put it back
Molly
into
would love that.
service.
It looks like a piece of exercise equipment.
Maybe the Jerome lobby. We'll just leave it there for
Yeah, I don't know.
I think if we had gone with our original plan in this building to create a history wall and that kind of thing, we could probably massage it into our area now here in this lobby, but that was taken off the plate a while ago. I don't know. I mean, it would be up to this board whether it fit or not, but.
And we could certainly look at some locations
Sure.
in this lobby. My sense is it would end up towards the back wall where we have some of the historical photos, and we'd move some of the lobby chairs maybe around it.
I just don't think it has any connection to either building.
It doesn't.
So, I would just prefer, we've kind of perpetuated this placement that maybe wouldn't have been agreed to now, however many years ago, but, I just don't think we need to perpetuate it, and now is a time to find its permanent home.
George?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it should go back to the Historical Society
Okay,
as part of their collection.
thank you.
That satisfies me. I think that would make sense. I'd love to see it back in action. I remember seeing photographs of the Belt Drive sawmill, and this must have been part of it, I think. So,
And it is heavy. We really only
Yeah.
want to move it once.
right. Wherever it goes, that's where it stays.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last item, because I know I'm up against my 15 minutes, is
We're ahead of schedule, so.
okay. The core meeting, I had to reschedule that. It was scheduled for late last week, and we weren't able to connect. But so I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what my intent is to talk with Marty on, is to have them assist us with a project assessment, not only for the courthouse, but that'll be our focus, but because this campus, there might be other opportunities, and have him help me and us think outside the box. The things that I could only come up with were, baseboard heat, the solar potential, which you guys talked about. And that's why I'm saying maybe the campus, because the solar, like I think Steve had suggested, might live on the jail, but it really serves the courthouse. The jail chiller replacement, that was scheduled to be done. It's already designed, but we could certainly relook at that. It is on the jail, but again, it serves this building. So we could certainly look at that, look at what the grant opportunities are, and then accelerate that. Again, just let's see what happens, and I'll come back to you. And then again, the geothermal option of, and the snow melt might be a key thing to tap into what could be done with that. The snow melt and all of that hasn't been designed yet. And I know that I've already met with the City of Aspen chief building official, and we were grandfathered in, so we've already paid our rent fees when we ripped all this out. So we can put it back with no cost. But what's the right way to put it back? And so we'll certainly look at that. And then just as a reminder, the building window replacement will not be in this project at this time. So, okay.
I just would encourage, with the opportunity of the city building on their Rio Grande parcel, we really are having kind of a civic campus here. And, CORE might already be engaging in conversations about that. So, I just would encourage you to kind of open it up to think even beyond just our buildings too, about what might be done.
Yeah, well, I know the library is going to have a boiler replacement here in the coming few years. I mean, there's just a lot, and you're exactly right. And is there opportunities? Because I know when we did the library renovation, the city had to put in a separate generator, and so there's just opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Kelly.
Steve?
I have one other item about the north side of the courthouse. Captain Kent Bigelow had the memorial bench that he paid for. It used to sit over there until the construction started, and it was a memorial bench for the Bigelow, some of his relatives that mentioned the Bigelow family. And then we tried to track it down. We never could find where it went. I have no idea if it still is in existence. Captain has passed away in the meantime, but I was thinking if that bench could be found and put in some spot, and I mean, I was even thinking maybe at the senior center or something, because he was involved at the senior center a lot. He was one of the weekly mahjong players there, and he also was a fixture in the Aspen Elks Lodge. So I think it would be nice if that bench could be located and then put in a good spot, and not necessarily anywhere on the north side of the courthouse, but just some appropriate place.
So as the snow melts, we'll keep an eye out for it. Yeah, and I'll definitely look, and I can report back to you when we find that and where we end up.
And I know
placing
we talked about it
it.
several years ago, and the bench had disappeared, and you didn't know where it was, and I have no idea. We never did find it. I remember seeing it sitting over there, in the past, somewhere over by the Galena Plaza or somewhere in that vicinity. And
Yeah, that I can ask Jeff Pendarvis with the city and see if maybe they had it somewhere. So, good.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you for this. Having the climate action plan being front and center is it's great to see that to be part of it.
Great, thank you. So next steps we'll complete our design here. It'll be 95% done on the 15th of March, and then I've got a week to turn that around, and then we'll go to the 100%. We're in the process of starting to meet with city officials to get our permitting process settled, and so we can submit by the end of March. I will work with CORE. We'll get the asbestos and lead removal scheduled and outreach happening, and then implement our phased construction plan. Depending on our construction permit, we're hoping for late July, August. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great. Wow.
Okay.
Never dull, huh?
Moving
Never
right
dull.
along. Yeah.
The next project that I'm going to be kicking off here just so you guys know, is in the next probably 3 weeks, is getting an RFP out for the jail basement renovation for a secure vehicle evidence area. And then in July, I'll be getting an RFP out to work on the bigger picture planning for the jail in the out years, the detention facility. So those are kind of the work plan for this year. So if there's anything you guys need or want me to report out on, I'll certainly can include it, or I can just give you little tidbits.
Great. This is all good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well done. Now we've got, we actually have 15, no, actually we've got half an hour before Kara's going to come on, but.
You're in luck. Actually, Kara could not make it today, so I was going to talk about the legislative issues. I really had just two items to talk to you about. One is a bill that's going to be introduced on March 7th, and then the other is to kind of give you an update on our follow-up to the retreat discussion about pulling the information together in a platform. I think I'll start there because that's less interesting, and we'll probably have more discussion on the bill.
Thanks, Jody.
So we did combine the legislative kind of summaries and issues from CCI, CC4CA, CCAT, and Club 20. What it turned out, though, is it turned into a 25-page long document, and I think there's a number of bills in there that the board isn't necessarily going to want to track or spend time on. And so what we wanted to propose doing is just working with the representatives on each one of those areas to highlight the bills that you would recommend we'd be tracking, and then bring that back to the board so that we're not trying to sort through 25 pages of bill summary and saying, what do you want to do? I think that's going to be a more difficult discussion. So we're hoping to have a briefer document maybe to review with you today, but I think the process probably would make more sense, to sit down with Kelly and Steve as our CCI reps, for example, and maybe choose two of you from CC4CA. Even we've got some confusion around that, and just kind of highlight those bills that from your conversations you think would be of Pickens County interest, and then we can narrow that down for a broader board conversation.
Sure.
We didn't expect it to end up being as long as it ended up being. With that, there is a piece of legislation. I think Kelly may be able to speak to it more than I, but on March 7th, which is tomorrow?
2 days.
Right? 2 days. It's March 5th today. There's a bill will be introduced that creates a family medical leave insurance program, and basically what that would allow is a partial wage replacement benefit for eligible individuals who take leave from work to either care for a new family member or a family member that's ill. The program would be paid for by a premium that's charged to all basically all charged for every employee in the state. It would initially not exceed 0.99%. I think then they would get a sense of program utilization and costs, and that fee could float based on the Division of Insurance, who I believe would be managing this. It would be considered a fee. It would be managed as an enterprise, so it wouldn't count against the state's TABOR limits. It is one of the key sponsors is Carrie Donovan, and I expect that we will have a request to support this bill. And Kelly, I know you had some background with this also, but.
A little bit. I mean, this just came to us through our CCI lobbyists, I don't know, yesterday, I think. And they were asking for input about sort of cost and how that individually as board members about pursuit of, looking at family leave. And when I was on staff, we did kind of broach this topic a little bit for Pickens County family leave and, what our benefits do provide and where there are gaps. So, I'm pretty excited about the fact that this has been introduced. You guys may have covered this last year. It was also introduced in didn't pass. One of the important distinctions is that local governments were exempt last year, whereas now they are included, and the importance of that is to help expand the insurance pool. And so it would cover all special districts, school districts, municipal, county, and state governments, as well as, all employers of the state, from what I've briefly read so far. And again, all we have is an unintroduced draft, so I'm not sure what conversations are going on between now and Thursday to make changes or any future amendments about this program.
Jenny Pingino sent a later email today that will be heard the following Wednesday is when the first hearing will be. So it'll be introduced Thursday, but not heard until the following Wednesday. So that gives us a little bit of time to analyze it and gather if we want to put in feedback to it.
Sure. And I know I can just speak a little bit from picking from our employer benefits. We offer a short-term disability program that helps on some for employees who may need leave, but that doesn't cover any family leave for if you need to care for someone else. And so the staff AIM team did have a subgroup that worked on the leave policy, which made some progress. And then an additional topic that I'm not sure if they're still discussing, but that we started discussing at the time was, is there ways that we can create a program here at the county that would cover if individuals need to leave to care for someone else? One of the things talked about was sort of a pooling.
A sick leave almost pool.
Yeah, like a sick leave pool where you would donate hours and then you could apply 4 hours to cover. And, some discussion about whether the FMLA definition is what would qualify you for access to that pool. And there's some gaps with the FMLA definition, given the kind of, I think, more diverse notions of family, we see all the time. But anyway, so this does rely on FMLA for consideration to access this insurance, but it would be a partial employer-employee contribution into this statewide benefit and would qualify for employees who work, I think, a minimum of 680 hours. So it's not a lot of time before you can access the benefit if you need it under this proposed legislation.
And we haven't had enough time with it to look. This would clearly have a budgetary impact on the county, and so it'd be good for you guys to be able to weigh that against the benefit. Frankly, at a statewide level, we probably have much better economies of scale in being able to implement a benefit like this than if we were trying to do it ourselves as an organization. It would probably take a higher percentage to really accommodate, but you would have more control over the program design, as Kelly was talking about.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like us to support this and, kind of actively engage on it.
Sounds good. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, what I've read from the stuff we've gotten from CCI, it sounds like it, is a kind of a bill that CCI will be supporting. As with any bill, the amendments are what determines whether it's really good or not so good. So I think I think we should try to get input back to CCI on Picking County's take on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Can
we
we
could do
help
that
staff
this
or ask
week,
staff
so
to help
Jenny
us
would
pull that
have it.
together?
Yeah, we can. I was just doing some back of the napkin. So in the general fund, it would probably be about, if the full 0.99% were charged, you're probably looking at about $156,000 to $160,000 impact or expenditure. That's against obviously a large personnel number because that's one of our main expenses. So we can definitely pull information like that together so that we understand the fiscal impact. I think as far as whether the policy goals are appropriate, we need that guidance from you guys. It sounds like that's the direction you're headed, that this kind of policy goal in terms of having a partial wage replacement for, this would be FMLA qualified events, would make sense at the state level, and that the funding mechanism right now appears to make sense.
I think it would help too to understand what we're paying in our short-term disability.
And I think those are going to cover
programs, too.
different things, but yeah, we could definitely get you that. Yeah.
Great.
Great. Knowing what I know about it, it sounds good. Fiscal impact, you're in the 150, 60,000 ballpark. I'd love to learn more, but I'm certainly in favor of supporting it. George, got a nod?
I'll come up to speed and try to have a better report out for us.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. We'll see what we can figure out on that. That's all I had on the legislative items, unless the board has other things to bring forward.
Only thing is the report that was it the House Bill 1033 is going to be signed. I think it's on the governor's desk at this point. So that's the nicotine tobacco licensing and taxing ability. Can't think of the actual name of it, but.
Yeah, and then once that is signed, we'll have to look at the implementation timelines and then talk to you guys about if we ramp up a program, licensing is a whole new ball of wax for us, and we need to figure out where that lives and how we'd implement that program. It'll be new for all counties. So.
Right. Yeah. That's all I can think of for now. Okay, so.
I'm curious, I think everyone received some outreach from Alan Harvey about Senate Bill 181.
Oh, 181,
which is the
right.
Oil and gas
And that's
reform
being,
of the commission and,
that's up today. I
removal
think
of
they're working on that
preemption
today,
for
aren't they?
local governments.
And that was one that we didn't have, the timeline was too short for us to bring it back to you as a body. And so I think the request was if you'd be willing to sign on as individual commissioners, not on behalf of the body. And so
I think George did, perhaps, and then I did. I don't know if you all did.
As well. Yeah.
And I sent a letter to Carrie Donovan as well, who's conducting the hearings. So we'll see what happens there. I think she sounded, perhaps that's going to be, a tough one. There's a huge economic question mark there. And I know the Petroleum Institute is lobbying hard against it. And so we'll see where it goes. But it certainly made sense if we recognize that we have oil and gas as part of our economy and it's not going away anytime soon, but we still need to be taking care of the neighborhoods and the people, and there's no reason not to pay attention to it, and so it made a lot of sense to me. And if we're transitioning to renewables in the next 20 years, it makes even more sense. So I guess we'll hear more about that when it happens. And I don't have anything else I want to bring up right now on that. What else have you got, John?
Then just on general board open discussion, just so the board is aware, we, in our hold area, the board will recall that we did an expansion of the hold area at the airport terminal a little over a year ago now. We've had a reassessment from the fire marshal. They didn't take account of all the seating and such to take that away from the square footage that'd be available. So our occupancy has gone down. Our max occupancy has gone down by about 100, and we've implemented that right away. We do line management, and we meter folks in depending on when flights are and that sort of thing. It did cause pretty significant backup with the storms and the canceled flights. We did have 11 flights trying to leave within a compressed period of time, which is really unusual for us. And the whole airport was pretty packed and pretty unpleasant. And so just wanted to let you know that part of that is driven for fire safety purposes, that we were metering people into the secure hold area. And we just had a really unusual number of flights in good weather if you're a skier, bad weather if you're a flyer this past week. And so if you are hearing about that, feel free to direct questions and such to either myself or John Kenny.
I have to say, I haven't heard a thing. No, I haven't heard any calls, pro or con.
Okay.
But that's an interesting.
We've heard a lot. So we thought you guys might, so we just wanted you guys to understand some of the dynamics going on there.
Even they got out here, they were not going to get into a lot of places around the country. So, when you're traveling, you sort of, so many parts of, we focus a lot on the issue in Aspen, but the reality is people are stuck in New York, they're stuck in Boston, they're stuck in Chicago. So
we should make this the nicest place to be stuck.
Right. That's true.
And it may not be that experience being the nicest place to be stuck right now, but at any rate, you're right, George. This is, with these major storms, it's a national airspace problem, but we did have some changes there. So I think it caused some more congestion, particularly at the front end of the airport. Our restaurant vendor is also unexpectedly unable to open up for breakfast and such that morning, and so it was a double whammy of having a lot of folks and that sort of thing. So feel free to point people our direction.
Certainly.
This
That's
also
all I've got
reminds
for
me
you.
of, there was an article in the paper today. I was glad to see that there was a curfew violation hearing happening. And I'm wondering if there's anything to report. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to see that, but.
Yeah, so the only thing is I do believe there was a request from American Airlines. I need to confirm this with John Ely to reschedule the hearing so that they could have legal representation there, but I do not have that confirmed right now, so more to come on that. But at the time that the Aspen Daily was reaching out on that, it was scheduled, I believe, for 1:30 next week, Wednesday next week. Is it next week or tomorrow?
Or is it tomorrow?
Yeah, I need to look on it. At any rate, so we'll need to check in with John Ely, who's been working with American Airlines on that.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Great. Okay, I think that we could probably, if that's the end of open discussion, I guess we would adjourn. I don't need a motion for adjourn of this. We just need to say that's it.
Well, you need to go into exec.
Oh, we should do that before we leave. But I'm thinking, is the executive session, that's an hour from now.
We could do that whenever we want. It's just us.
Just go in, right?
Yeah,
okay.
so if what you could do is call the special meeting and then have the vote to go into executive session. I would suggest that maybe you take a few-minute break because there's one item I believe is going to be added, and I'm not sure if John is watching the video or not.
So we don't know if he'll
with it.
Yeah, so we could take a 10-minute break and pick it up at 3.
And then come back in and go into exec.
Okay, so before we all walk out now, so we're going to call a special meeting for an executive session, and I need a motion to go.
Greg, if we could just wait on that, because I think we're adding one item, and I want to be sure.
Oh, you still want to?
We're doing a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back.
Okay, that's why you brought that. I was wondering why you talked about. Okay, we're going to take a break first. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Sometimes I'm just talking.
Thanks, Grassroots. I think.
That's what you need a really long gavel.